Thank you. This is a piece of short fiction. It did actually happen, but it's still fiction. It's called The Small Ghost. I didn't believe in poltergeists, ghosts, or any other psychic phenomena. Well, not then. We had at last realised our ambition to have a second-hand bookshop, and as we stood in what would be our new premises, supernatural intervention was nowhere in our thoughts. We'd taken a lease on a small shop in a historic Cotswold town, a tiny quaint property tucked into a courtyard that opened into the main square, all mellow golden stone and charm. Opening day arrived and we stood in the middle of the shop excited as two children with a new toy. The letting agent appeared in the doorway and smiled as he said, "Welcome to Talbot Court and good luck." "Thanks," I replied. "We've got a good feeling about this. We hope it'll do well." "I hope so too," and as he turned to go he looked serious, saying, "I hope the resident poltergeist approves." I dismissed the mark immediately. Rubbish. We quickly settled into our new venture. Sales were good, new friends made in the town and among the customers. I was in charge of window displays and enjoyed planning topical and eye-catching displays to showcase our eclectic stock of books. Autumn came, and as November drew near I thought about Armistice Day display. Books on the three services, battlefields, war poetry, and novels of the time went in, and as usual a few props. My father's tank commander's beret, and my father-in-law's flying helmet and logbook, along with a wreath of poppies, completed the window. That night I locked the shop as usual, and paused to study the windows from the outside, to see that they looked as good as they could. Satisfied, I walked down the dark alleyway towards the lights of the square, and home. The next morning I unlocked the front door, switched on the lights, and then stopped dead in my tracks. Books, which last night had been on their shelves in the window, were now strewn across the floor, flung face down, pages crushed. I picked up the books, smoothing out the damage as best I could, and redid my display. Later that day the shop was quiet and I had time to sit and think about what had happened. There was no logical explanation for books lying face down as they did, as if flung by force out of the window. If a couple had fallen off the shelves, they would have tumbled forward into the window space. The rest of the day was full of routine jobs and customers, and when I finally went to switch off the lights upstairs, the daylight had almost gone. As I came back down the stairs in the half-light, I was aware of the figure of a small girl in 17th century dress, standing at the bottom of the stairs. She vanished as I opened my mouth to speak. A trick of the light, I told myself firmly. Next morning I went in expecting to find the same chaos, but everything was as I'd left it. And over the next few weeks books stayed in the window, but I sometimes found books face down in the middle of the floor. They were always history books, particularly anything relating to military history and war. I didn't see the small ghost again, but my husband came home one evening uncharacteristically shaken and told me that he too had seen a small girl at the bottom of the stairs. The following day we were both in the shop when the letting agent put his head round the door. "How's it going?" he asked cheerily. "Fine, it's going really well," my husband replied. "While you're here," I said, "why did the last tenant leave before her lease expired?" The agent looked a bit shifty and said, "Well, silly woman got spooked by some poltergeist. Said things were hurled about and cold spots in the shop, all nonsense, of course." His laugh did seem rather forced and nervous. "What did the previous tenant sell?" I asked. "Oh, military and armour." The agent paused. "Odd choice for her, but her husband left her the business after he died. He'd been in the forces and it was a bit of a passion of his." After he left the shop, we speculated wildly about what we may or may not have taken on along with the lease. Local history might give us a clue, I suggested. My knowledge of Gloucestershire in the 17th century is scant, to say the least. I'll go and talk to Arthur tomorrow. He's reckoned to be the local expert here. The next morning, before I opened the shop, I called in to see Arthur in his gallery across the square. I explained the whole story to him, expecting him to dismiss it all as hysterical nonsense and to ask me if I'd been drinking. Instead, he took his time and answered in a serious tone, quite unlike his usual jokey banter. He told me the town had been the site of a fierce battle between the Roundheads and Cavaliers in 1646, the last battle of the First Civil War. The parliamentarians defeated the Royalists. A lot of blood was shed in the church and in the square, but where our shop was had been the stables for the inn, where they locked women and children in there for safety. Cromwell's men found them and slaughtered them. I think you're seeing one of the children who was killed in that building, and she's troubled by war and references to conflict and fighting. Arthur's voice was serious. I thanked him and went slowly back to the shop. I rang my husband and told him what Arthur had said. He listened and just commented, maybe we should try an apology. That evening before I left the shop, I stood at the bottom of the stairs in the dark and, feeling a complete fool, whispered, I'm very sorry, whoever you are, if we have upset you in any way. Please be at peace. Good night. Days went by, weeks, and then months with no further sightings of our small ghost. Books were occasionally misplaced or put on the floor, but there were no signs of danger or distress as there had been before. We both admitted that we always said good night to her before we left because, well, you just don't know.